Hey, welcome back. The best tip I could possibly give you in a 5-minute YouTube video here on highly emotional binge eating is as follows. The only way out is through, and abstinence is the healing. What do I mean by those two things? Firstly, the only way out is through. You can't sidestep this stuff. I'm going to try keto, I'm going to try intermittent fasting, maybe there's a solution in that. Hey, I'll even come to your approach, Ryan, and try more of a plant-based methodology. I love plant-based. It's no silver bullet for these deeply held habits, mindsets first of all, but habits, behaviors that you've developed for, never mind months, but years, in many cases for lots of binge eaters, decades. All of the triggers in your environment, your day-to-day life that you associate so much with that stuffing or soothing or distraction via food as a coping mechanism, all the routines and habits you've built around your binge eating. You think that gets fixed by the amount of meals that you eat per day, whether you do intermittent fasting and skip breakfast and then backload all of your nutrition throughout the day, or even the composition of the amount of calories you eat per day. Is it clean food? Do you do a bit more flexible dieting? If you really believe that any of these things are going to have a significant, they could have a small amount, I concede, but any significant impact on you breaking through with binge eating, I would respectfully say you're so mistaken. Like, I understand it. That's how I used to think about this, but what I mean by the only way out is through is you don't get to work around this stuff. There's no quick fix. Okay, you have to really face and accept that this stuff is so deeply behavioral, it's so habitual. You've built these routines, again, associations with food for years, in many cases, for lots of us decades, as I say. And so that ain't fixed, is what I'm trying to say by a new plan, the latest diet. So that's the first thing you have to accept. The only way out is through. You have to face this stuff. And the second part, abstinence is the healing. What do I mean by this? Abstinence is the healing. The thing that ultimately gets you to break those behavior patterns, forget the old habits and associations that make that potent, powerful junk food when you're in a highly charged emotional state, whether it's boredom that set you off, triggered you, or stress, you've had an argument with your spouse or your boss at work, maybe it's the reward, I deserve a treat dynamic that I often talk with my clients about. Whatever the particular trigger is, abstinence is the healing. Saying no in that chain of behavior rather than saying yes is where the transformative elements lie. It's just really hard to do the first couple of times because it's so familiar to you to reach for food, to stuff, to soothe, to distract, again, with your coping mechanism when you're bored, when you're stressed, when you're feeling lonely. Right, whatever's got to be in your bonnet. That's such a natural process to you. It seems like food is the solution. It seems like it is the answer. Again, a lot of this stuff is not even happening consciously because you've been through the habit wheel so many times that it's just automatic. It just feels, oh, I suddenly ended up in the fridge, is very much the feeling. That's not because you're a fool or because you're an idiot. It's because it's so automated, because you've engaged in that behavior. And you see food as the solution. You've been through that process so many times, it just feels so natural to do that, to reach, to grab for the food. But it's in the pausing, it's in the slowing down of that process, and it's in the saying no, right? Abstinence is the healing. When you break that strongly used chain of behavior, your mind is like, whoa, what's going on here? And the first couple of times you do this, it'll fight the good fight with you. It'll be like, what are you doing? No, this is crazy. It might even send you bizarre withdrawal symptoms because junk food can be such an addiction. I don't think that's a stretch, certainly at least an affliction. Could send you very physical, maybe placebo, psychosomatic, let's say, withdrawal symptoms, but it'll send you that messaging. We're so used to having this food, we're gonna die. It's gonna be a terrible day. This is an itch that we need to scratch. We usually itch it, Ryan. What's going on here? You're not giving us Pop-Tarts today. We've had an argument. The cortisol's flying. You're not gonna give us Pop-Tarts today? No. I'm pausing, I'm breathing, I'm stopping, and I'm not giving in because I need to break that pattern of behavior. And look, first couple of times you do this, it's savage, it's brutal. But by the time you say no, 5, 6, 7 times. Each time those triggers come up in your day-to-day life, whether it's once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week, every single day, or just once every 2 weeks, you saying no, by the 5th or 6th time you do this, you'll notice, hey, it's starting to get a little bit easier. And it's not linear, but that process, generally speaking, certainly for me, it compounded, right? A little over 10 years ago, and I often get new comments from new subscribers, I would say, on this channel saying, well, like, what do you know about weight loss, Ryan? How do you resonate with us? You were never that overweight in the first place. That's understandable, because I think a lot of people just come to my YouTube videos and see the 2026 version of me, but I was well on the way. I was 15 kilos heavier than I am today, which still, because I'm relatively lean these days, still doesn't actually put me at obese according to BMI, but I was certainly overweight. And I was certainly eating like utterly out of control, like an overweight, obese person, that's for sure. There was only one way I was going before I finally get a hold of this. And I was binge eating 2 to 3, let's be conservative, let's say it was twice a week. It changed, it fluctuated, but twice a week, I'd have these, between my diets, quote unquote, my good days, let's say, as I used to say back then, I would eat 4,000 or 5,000 calories. Just when I was having a bad day and a bad moment, I'd just stuff, feel terrible, stuff, deprived the next day, and I was just in this vicious cycle. I'm sure you've been there. And so that's where I was. And one of the things that helped broke me out of that is just saying, look, no, this is behavioral. I've tried every diet under the sun. Some things work to some degree, but I keep coming back to this crossroads where every time I get bored, every time I get stressed, every time there's massive cortisol release, every time I'm a bit sad about fairly trivial stuff in my life back then. There was nothing major happening. I was a young man. There was nothing major going wrong in my life back then. But any trivial emotion that I had to deal with, food was the answer, because I was so used to, again, that behavioral pattern. And you say no, back to my point, abstinence is the healing. You say no the first couple of times, it's rough, man. It's really, really hard. I understand it. I've been there, but honestly, by time 5, 6, 7, so much easier. By time 10, there isn't as much effort involved. And in the same way that progressively over time, you've built food to be this solution in your mind on this pedestal as being this coping mechanism for all or many of your emotions, you depedestalize it, you take it off that, and you learn that it's not, you can see it's not actually part of the solution. And now for me, the way I describe this now, to be really realistic and honest with folks, as one always tries to be here, is there is still every now and again, to be honest, a lingering, I would say a faded connection that my mind has, an association that I still have to food if I'm having a bit of a tough moment, but it's nowhere near as potent and powerful and frequent as it used to be for me 10, 11, 12 years ago. And that's where you can get to. And I'll often say to my clients that come into my program as big time binge eaters, like some horror stories, way worse than me, big horror stories coming into my program, what I'll often say to them is, look, success on this program doesn't look like you have no binging, no binges, no binge episodes in the next 12 or 24 weeks. Right? That's not what success on this program looks like, because that's probably not, it has happened, but that's probably not going to happen in this case. What it looks like is every now and again, you'll have a slip up, because you've been doing this stuff for decades. You think you're going to get rid of it entirely in 3 to 6 months? No, of course not. But generally speaking, how faded is the connection is what we're going to ask ourselves in 3 or 6 months' time, right? How often did you actually give in to that temptation to binge versus times gone by? What we're going for on my program is way less binge eating episodes, way less by the time the program is finished, way less a natural inclination to turn to food to answer every trigger emotion in our lives. That's what success looks like with binging. And that's where you can get to. And like, it's taken me a very, very long time. And like I've been very transparent about, it's not, and like I always want to warn about, it's not a linear process, right? There's periods where like my binge eating is so under control, and then little moments, little seasons where I'm like, oh, you're coming back like a little gremlin. But generally speaking, month on month, year on year, my relationship with food has only gone from strength to strength. And I've made such a commitment to breaking the patterns of behavior, even if it feels savage in the moment, The cold turkey approach where you face it full force. And that's, like I say, first couple of iterations, that's really hard. But when you break those chains of behavior, you don't have the strength of association when the emotion comes up to food. It doesn't feel as much like the automatic solution and the answer. You can see through it. You can detach the food from the feeling, both consciously and subconsciously and unconsciously, of course. And like this whole process, it's messy, it's ugly, and it takes time, and you'll make mistakes with it. But oh my goodness, it's so worth it. And it gets so much better. So I said, hey, this is going to be 5 minutes at the start. Shock! Ryan's prattled on for 10 plus minutes now. But the only way out is through, and the abstinence is the healing. One final tip I'll add here, this popped into my brain, is give yourself some grace, guys. You'll make mistakes with this. Like I say to my clients, like, you're still going to binge on my program. Do not think the success criteria here says no binging for 12 weeks. You will make mistakes. But is it less frequent? Is it less when you do binge, is it less out of control? Do you face it faster? Do you get back on track faster? That's what we're going to judge your success on. And that is realistic to get to. But the way you get to that is you stop trying to sidestep this by looking at it as a surface level issue. It's not an action tactic issue that's solved by emotional eating, keto, plant-based diet, etc., etc. This is deeply emotional, behavioral, habitual, and you need to tackle it like that, because that's what it is. Like, meet the monster where it's at, okay? Stop trying to solve it with something so trivial that doesn't really work. You can have the best plant-based meal plan on the planet, designed by yours truly. If you're a binge eater, it doesn't matter. You're only sticking to that plan 4 days of the week, and then you're going to have your 2 off-the-rail days, just as you did with every other diet you've tried in the past, because this is behavioral. So step number 1, you stop sidestepping this and you face the full force. This is a behavioral issue, and I have to fix it like that. And step number 2 is understand that the abstinence is the healing. That's the transformative process, and it's really hard at first, but damn, and this is your light at the end of the tunnel. It gets so much easier. If you want help with all of this, click the link down below to go and learn more about joining my program, working with me one-on-one, getting that constant support, that extreme accountability to help you solve your emotional connection to food, and finally and consistently lose 4 to 8 pounds per month until you get to your ideal healthy body weight range. One little disclaimer I'll say is that I think it's best for any heavy binge eaters to look at the coaching calls option in Vegan, Slim and Sustain rather than the message only tier, which is obviously available at a lower investment. So that's one thing I would say. If you do have a relationship with food that you really want to work on, I think we need to meet face to face on Zoom so I can help you unpick and unpack that. So consider the coaching calls option more so. But in any case, fill out the form at the link down below, veganslimandsustain.com, and I'll send you information about both of the options there, so you've got all the details to compare and see what works best for you. Hope this helps. The only way out is through. Abstinence is the healing. Give yourself some grace, for goodness sakes, because you built these habits for years and years. They're not going to go overnight. So give yourself some grace and forgiveness for the mistakes you make along the way. See you in the next one.